In this lesson, we're going to start with a quiz from last week's theme, which was back to school. And your first quiz question is, I have to what last week's phrasal verbs to make some quiz questions for you? Pick out or look through. That's right. The answer is I have to look through last week's phrasal verbs to make some quiz questions for you. Look through means to look at the different parts of something. We can't say pick out because pick out means choose. I can't pick out all of the phrasal verbs. I can only pick out one or two or a few phrasal verbs. In this case, look through means look through all of the phrasal verbs or look through the list of phrasal verbs. Question number 2 is, it's almost time to what more vocabulary for school and studying in this lesson? Head back or go over? That's right, the answer is it's almost time to go over more vocabulary for school and studying in this lesson. Go over means to examine and review something carefully. We can't head back because head is another word for move or go, and usually physically. We can head in a direction or go in a direction. We can head back or move back, but remember, physically. We're not moving to a place. We're going to go over or examine the information. Question number 3 is, I can't wait to what my routine again. I'm excited to start studying again. Get back into or ease into. That's right. The answer is I can't wait to get back into my routine. I can't wait to start studying again. Get back into means to resume doing something or start again after a break. We can't say ease back into in this situation because I said I can't wait. That means I'm excited. And if you ease back into something or ease into something, that means go slow, take it easy, and I don't want to go slow because I'm excited. If we get back into something, we can use an idiom or the full version instead, which is get back into the swing of things. Swing is a word which is related to rhythm. For example, this woman is on a swing and she's swinging while watching the mountains. One more time, she's swinging while watching the mountains. That's her rhythm. Remember, the full expression is get back into the swing of things. This isn't just for school, this is for any kind of routine which you need to get back into or return to after a long break. Last week's theme was back to school, which is similar to this week's theme, which is studying and learning. And let's start with our word of the week, which is a verb, and that verb is to cram. Now, let's read a short story together to see if we can understand the definition in context. That's something very important. Tom forgot about his math test until the night before. He had to cram all the information in just a few hours. He stayed up late and pulled an all-nighter reading his notes and trying to remember everything. It was stressful, and he was extremely tired the next day but he did well on his test. So, my question is, what is the definition of to cram? Cram or to cram means to study a lot in a short amount of time, usually before an exam. The real definition is to put a lot of stuff or information in a small space. For example, information in your head or your brain the night before a test. Not exactly that your brain or your head is small, it's just a lot of information going in there in a short amount of time. This is very common for college students or high school students who have a big test and need to study very hard. Some examples are Sarah didn't study for her history exam all week, so she had to cram the night before. Michael crammed for his English test by reading the entire book in one evening. Instead of cramming at the last minute, Emma decided to study a little bit every day. Later in this lesson, we're going to see more vocabulary words for college, university, school, studying, and learning. But now, remember the word to cram. In the next part of today's lesson, I'd like to go over a new type of lesson that I released on my channel this week. And that lesson was adjectives, specifically 20 adjectives for studying and learning. And adjectives are very important in English, or maybe all languages. Adjectives are words that are used to describe other words. So I asked the question in the comment section, and we received two responses. My question was, what type of student are you? Can you describe yourself using the adjectives? And our first response was from, excuse my pronunciation, Manikandan, who said, I am dedicated. Thank you. Our second response was from a channel member who's very active, Patrizia, who said, I'm persistent despite my difficulties to balance myself between working and studying. So let's take a moment to review what these words mean and look at some other adjectives. Dedicated, like Manikandan, means committed to a task or purpose. He's always the first to arrive and last to leave. That's because he's really dedicated to his goals. Like, excuse my pronunciation, Manikandan. Persistent, like Patrizia, means continuing despite difficulties or opposition. She failed, there's an error here, she failed the test, but just made a new appointment to take it again. Because she's persistent. She's not going to give up so easily, or she's not going to quit so easily. And our next adjective describes both of those people who commented, which is determined, focused on achieving something, like all of you who are watching this video. Last year was really challenging for him. He failed a lot of courses. But he's determined to do better this year. He's focused. He wants to achieve it. So now let's look at three more adjectives which are very similar but a little different. And the first one we're going to look at is meticulous. Meticulous means very careful and precise, paying attention to every small detail. If someone is meticulous, that means they usually go slow and are very focused. They care. The next word is detail oriented. Again, about details, which means paying attention to all the small elements or details of a task. Remember, this means that details are important to you. If you're meticulous, it's more about going slow. But if you're detail oriented, it just means details are important to you. A small difference. The third one is a difficult word, which is thorough. Thorough. Thorough means doing something with great attention to detail. You're doing a very detailed job. Details are important to you, and you check everything. Again, very similar. Details are very important to you. But this word looks very difficult, especially the pronunciation, and especially when we read it. I'm not the only one who thinks so. For example, I found this on the website Reddit. Tough, though, taught, thought, through, thorough, throughout. I'm sorry, folks. This is so hard to learn and put in my brain. This comment was from an English learner. And the response that I found was, it shouldn't be that tough through thorough thought, though. And the response to that is, native speaker here, and that took me a moment, which means it took me a moment to process. It took me a moment to understand. So we know that these words are very difficult. But let's take this opportunity to look at some differences and some tricks to learn these words. It shouldn't be that tough through thorough thought, though. Oof, it's difficult. It shouldn't be that tough through thorough thought, though. The first word, tough, difficult. The next word, pronunciation, through, with, or by. The next word is the word we're studying, thorough, which means detail or with detail. Then we have the word thought, which is about thinking or using our mind. And our final word is though, which is another version or way to express the word but. So it shouldn't be that tough through thorough thought, though. Take a moment and pause the video and try to practice. The next part of our video will be a comparison. It shouldn't be that tough through thorough thought, though. And then I have the pronunciation version, which is it shouldn't be that tough through thorough thought, though. Make sure you're repeating after me. One more time. It shouldn't be that tough through thorough thought, though. And the final version with the real meanings or the different meanings is, but it shouldn't be that difficult with detailed thinking. It shouldn't be that tough through thorough thought, though. Take as long as you need. Pause this video and practice as much as you want. Okay, and we're back. Now, I understand that that last part probably wasn't too fun, but I hope I was able to help you with some new words and definitions, and especially pronunciation and reading. Those are very difficult words, so go practice. But now I'd like to move into another part of the lesson, which is phrasal verbs. And before we start, now I make PDF materials for almost all of my lessons. So if you'd like to support the channel and go get some new materials, just visit the link in the description. But now let's look at only two phrasal verbs. This is going to be quick from this week's lesson. And our first phrasal verb will be figure out. I have to take some time to figure this one out. And of course, figure out means to understand or solve something. She figured out the problem after several attempts. She solved the problem. He spent hours trying to figure out the problem. He spent hours trying to solve the problem. Well, figure is a word in English that actually means think, and an expression or question that you'll hear probably in movies or other parts of the United States. I don't use this question very much, but you can hear it, is how do you figure? And this really just means how do you understand? We don't say how do you understand? We say how do you figure? Which really means tell me what you think. How do you understand the situation? And figure out is very interesting because figure means think. Out, we really don't know. But we can imagine that a problem is in a situation, and the opposite of in is the word out. So we have to think about the problem to take it out of the situation because it's in the situation. We have to remove the problem by thinking, by figuring. We have to solve the problem. And I hope that helps you remember the meaning of figure out and give it a little bit of logic. Similar to our next phrasal verb, which is work out. Could you help me work it out? Again, to find a solution to a problem. She worked out the answer after thinking it through. She solved the problem. He couldn't work out why his solution wasn't correct. Again, he couldn't solve the problem. But I thought that work out means to exercise. Are these verbs similar? Are they the same? Or are they different? Well, again, when we work out, we exercise. And that's doing something very good for our body. For example, eating bad food can make us unhealthy and give us problems. So we want to eliminate that problem. And by doing that, we exercise. We work the problem out of our body because that food gives us health problems. That's not good for us. Those problems are inside our body. So by doing this exercise with work, we work it out of our body. And again, I hope that gives a little more logic and shows that figure out and work out are almost the same verb. One by figuring or thinking, and the other by working something out of a situation, solving the problem. Our final part of today's lesson will be about extra vocabulary related to studying and learning, but also more vocabulary about school. And we're going to start with something that I find myself explaining all the time as an American. And that vocabulary term is the difference between college and university. Americans typically use the word college to talk about higher education, life after high school, specifically degrees like a bachelor's or a master's. The word university is typically in the name of the college. For example, New York University. It's very common in America, in my experience, to say something like, "Are you going to college?" or "Did you go to college?" We never say, "Did you go to university?" At least in my experience. University is only in the name. Again, for example, New York University. Our next vocabulary word is to brainstorm. And to brainstorm means to generate ideas or solutions through creative group discussion or individual thinking. To plan something, to get your ideas out there, to maybe write a paper or for a project or something like that. To share ideas, to prepare for something. Our next vocabulary term is to take notes. And this one is a little easy, but there's a difference. When we're studying, for example, during a lecture, we say take notes, not do or make. Maybe something you're doing right now is taking notes. But when I write these lessons for you in Apple Notes, I make a new note. It's very different because we take notes when we're studying, but we make or create a new note in an application. Our next vocabulary word is to outline or an outline. And that's to create a structured summary of key points or ideas to guide writing or study. An outline is just a structured format. And for an example, I took a picture of the application Pages in Mac, and you can see the example here. An outline is just a structure, again to help us put our ideas in an application or on a paper. Our next vocabulary term is to proofread, and this is to carefully read through a document to check for and correct errors in grammar, spelling, punctuation, and formatting. When we proofread a document, that document was probably written by someone else, or it was our original document that we don't want to be our final document. We proofread to make sure everything is perfect, everything is correct. Our next word is to skim, to quickly read through a text to get a general idea of the content. From our lesson about idioms from this week, to get the gist of something, to understand the general idea. If you skim through something, you read through it quickly. You're not looking for individual details. Our next word is to paraphrase. And this means to give information in a different way while maintaining the original meaning, usually to simplify complex information and communicate it. It's similar to summarizing, but it's just giving the information in a quick and different way. Our next word is to peer review, and that's to evaluate and give feedback on a classmate's work, usually as part of a process to improve the quality of writing or research before final submission. Your peer is a person on your level. So your peer could be someone who is the same age as you, or in college, for example, your peer could be someone in your class, a classmate. And to peer review means to review or to check their work. For example, I have a degree in history, and in history, it's very important for historians to check other historians' work. That's called the peer review process. And after that process, they say, yes, this information is accurate, or I agree with it, or I disagree with it, and here's why. We always check or evaluate our peers' work. Our next word is to interpret or an interpretation. To understand the meaning of information, data, or concepts, often requiring analysis. And if you interpret something, for example, if you speak another language and I say something, you have to understand that meaning, but that's your perception. You're interpreting it in your way. When we communicate, it's my job to be as clear as possible so you can interpret the information in the way that I want to communicate. Our next word is to drill vocabulary. To repeatedly practice words and their meanings to memorize. And here you can see a picture of the tool, a drill. And another idiom from this week was to drill something into someone's head. This is with repetition. This is about memorization. And I'm sure that you drill vocabulary all the time. And that's pretty necessary if you want to learn a new language. So, as always, thank you so much for your support, and I hope you learned a lot of new information about studying and learning. And I'll see you in the next lesson.